Thanks for joining us here on WION. We're cutting across straight to Trebes in France. This is a small town in the south of the country where there is an unfolding hostage situation at a supermarket. Tragic news though, 2 people have been killed in this attack, which police are now treating as a terror incident. The entire area has been cordoned off. Police vehicles now taking charge of the situation as our security agencies to determine, really speaking, how many hostages there might be at that supermarket in this town near Toulouse in France. These are live visuals coming in from the town of Trebes in France, where there is an ongoing situation. The French Prime Minister has described it as a serious incident. The shooter has apparently claimed allegiance to the Islamic State. Remember, there have been different reports coming in on that particular detail. Initially, we had heard that it was the Islamic State itself that had claimed responsibility for this attack. Now we're hearing that it is the shooter that claims that he is associated with the Islamic State. So still to get clarity on that situation. Also, just for our viewers, I just want to remind them that these are reports filtering in at this point, unconfirmed reports as well. But what we can tell you is what is up on our screen right now, that 2 people have indeed been killed in this shooting incident in the south of France. Now, once again, just to bring our viewers up to speed with developments, so to speak, what we heard initially was that there was a gunman who was fleeing from police when he entered a supermarket and took shoppers there hostage. And that was the situation that sort of started unfolding at that point of time. Now we're given to believe that there was a twin shooting incident that prompted police to arrive there. And we're hearing also that one person who's been killed has been identified as the local butcher at the supermarket. Still trying to determine the identity, the confirmed identity of both people who've been killed in this incident in France. Now, if that link to Islamic State is confirmed, this will be the first major incident that has taken place since the election of President Emmanuel Macron in May of last year. Now, there was a state of emergency that had been put in place after the Paris attacks at the Bataclan, but it was finally lifted in October last year. However, there continues to be a high threat level in France. Let me go across to my colleague Mandy Clark, WION's bureau chief in London, joining us on the phone line for more on that story. Mandy, fill us in with the details you have.
Well, it's an ongoing situation, and the details are a bit sketchy, but some reports are saying that at least one person has been killed at the supermarket where the hostage-taking is currently ongoing. Other sources have put the death toll at 2. Now, what we do know is the gunman claimed to be part of the Islamic State group, and earlier a policeman was shot. It's believed to be the same person. Then he went to the supermarket where this hostage-taking situation is ongoing. The police have advised people to avoid the area and has called the situation very serious.
Mandy, does it surprise you that this is taking place in a town in south of France? The visuals make it seem as if this is a rather small locality. It's not a very big or popular tourist destination. And it is, really speaking, coming at a time that France hasn't seen any sort of major incidents since Emmanuel Macron taking over.
Yes, it seems unusual. It's not the high-profile attacks that we have seen Islamic State perform in France. And after Macron took over, there was a number of attempted attacks in around Paris, but that was quickly dealt with. There is, anytime you visit Paris, a high level of police presence. So this seems a softer target, if you will. It's a rural area that would be less ready for a terror attack. We have seen France being hit with jihadist attacks since 2015, though, and the country has remained on high alert since that complex attack in Paris, where attackers hit a number of locations at the same time. Of course, there was that terrible attack on Bastille Day where the lorry driver killed 83 people. So France has certainly been the focus of terror attacks, but this is out of the usual remit of those big, spectacular attacks that terror groups tend to go for because it really gets the headlines.
Right, and you, of course, had covered that attack for us following Bastille Day, Mandy. And if I could just ask you, just to dwell on that point a little further, the fact that this shooter, this gunman, has claimed allegiance with the Islamic State or to the Islamic State, is that a fact also that kind of throws security forces sometimes off? These are points that need to be investigated further, given the situation of this particular shooting, a small area, not very popular with tourists, and those details, so to speak.
Yeah, the thing is, and we've seen this in lots of instances, people might claim allegiance to a terror group like Islamic State, and they might have been radicalized online, but they wouldn't necessarily have received direct orders or training from Islamic State group. So this will be definitely the line of inquiry that police will take in the coming days to get a better understanding if this person was radicalized online, where the radicalization happened, if this happened in a jail, because we've seen a lot of radicalization, particularly in Europe and specifically in France, happen within jails. So has this person been previously convicted, radicalized in jail, and then came out? So the police will be trying to figure out a profile of this attacker, how he got radicalized, to really close down those holes where others could also be radicalized. But just claiming allegiance to Islamic State doesn't necessarily mean that this gunman has been trained by them.
Fair enough. Stay with me a while longer, Mandy. Let me go across to my colleague Mohammed Saleh, who's also with us on the broadcast. Saleh, of course, details still remain sketchy on this news coming in. Do you have any updates for us?
Yeah, that's an interesting point which Mandy was making. And just to take off from there, Aisha, if we were to look at, the circumstances in the place where this attack has taken place, this defies and goes against the logic of someone who'd want to make a big bang by going forth and making a statement via a terror attack, because this is essentially what organizations like Al-Qaeda and ISIS have always done in the past: attack those targets which creates a maximum sort of a media hype. Now, in this instance, what we are looking at is a rather low profile sort of a south of France town which has in fact come under attack. Now, we do not know whether this individual that we are referring to, whether it is one individual who's opened fire or if there is another individual as well, because there are two separate incidents of shooting that we are talking about here, according to some of the reports in media. Whether it was the same individual who has carried out shooting in two separate places, that also is not very clear. Now, we do not at this point of time know who the attacker is. We do not know what was the motive that was in fact driving him forth. And also at this point of time, it's also still not very clear as to, this is said to be a developing hostage situation. We do not know as to how many hostages there are in the supermarket. There are unconfirmed reports which state that the gunman right now is alone in the supermarket. We're also given to understand by some of the reports in the local media that the butcher of the supermarket is the person who has been shot dead by the gunman, and also a police officer also may have sustained injuries in the shooting, is what has been reported. Now, at this point of time, there is information that is still trickling in. The police, we're given to understand that there is a police presence of almost about 300 to 400 people who have completely cordoned off the area. The area is now completely out of bounds for the local public. And we'll, of course, have a much clearer picture in some time from now when the gunman is apprehended. Has he got any demands if he's taken hostages? Would he like to have negotiations with the police and law enforcement agencies there? What is, in fact, driving him forth? We have none of that information. At this point of time, the police are saying that they're treating this as a terror attack because reportedly the gunman shouted Allahu Akbar at the time that he started firing on the people indiscriminately. So that is the information that has been reported in the local media in France, and more information is of course awaited. But what is interesting at this point of time, if we could just make one last point, is that this is one of the major incidents that has taken place in France since the time that Emmanuel Macron has taken charge as the president of that country, and this is one of those instances that has taken place which now needs to be addressed.
Absolutely. Stay with me, Saleh and Mandy. Just for our viewers joining in, I'm picking up some updates from the Associated Press that I'd like to take our viewers through. As per AP, a suspect has been shot dead. Has shot dead one person and seriously wounded another inside a supermarket in the southern French town of Trebes. This as per a police union officer. The second victim, as per local reports, is a customer. And there are now confirmations that 2 people have been dead, 1 policeman injured, and at least 1 other woman who has been injured in this attack in the small town of Trebes in the south of France. Now, what we're given to understand from these updates is that the suspect had earlier, so this might lend some more information on this twin shooting theory. One, that the suspect had earlier fired shots at police officers who were on their way back from jogging near the city of Carcassonne on Friday morning. Now, this is again as per the police union person who's spoken with AP, and 1 police officer was injured in that incident and is but not in a life-threatening situation. The visuals there on your screen are live visuals coming in from the town of Trebes in the south of France. Just going back to that update now very quickly for our viewers. After that first initial shooting incident, the police apparently chased this individual down who made his way into the supermarket, which is where the situation continues to be an ongoing one. Again, local media reports telling us that there are 4 people who've been affected, 2 have died, and 1 policeman has been injured, and at least 1 other woman has been injured in this ongoing situation. Now, the police officers in question over here, the ones who were shot at by the suspect, are based in the southern city of Marseille and were on a temporary mission in the city of Carcassonne. Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron has asked the Interior Minister Gérard Collomb to go to the site of the incident to understand further developments that are taking place there. Right, French journalist Stephen Thierry is joining me on the phone line. Stephen, thank you very much for speaking with us. Can you help us understand the latest as far as the situation goes?
Yeah, at this point we know that there is 1 person in a supermarket. This person shot 5 times with his gun, and we know that 2 persons have been touched. And the person says that he's an attacker from Daesh. Now, the information we have is that the person is alone, so we don't know if he's still alive or not, and we are waiting for more information to come.
Is the hostage situation still ongoing?
The hostage situation now is clear. He has no more hostages with him. He shot on 2 persons. We don't know if these 2 persons are dead or alive, but the attacker is now alone in the supermarket.
All right, so the update we have from Stephen is that the attacker is now alone in the supermarket and that there are no more hostages with him. That is the update that Stephen is bringing us from France. Stephen, if I can ask you one more quick question. Give us an idea about the town itself. Is this a very populated area of France? How many people live here approximately, if you could tell us?
No, it's quite empty area. It's a country. It's a supermarket isolated from the city. There is a school 5 minutes away from the supermarket. But now the area is totally closed for the circulation. No car can pass in. The population is totally blocked.
All right, Stephen Thierry, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us and bringing us that update from France itself. So, as we were expecting, Mandy, confirmation there from the French journalist that this is indeed a rather small town in the south of France, which again brings up the question of whether or not this was a terrorist attack or somebody who was just acting, let's say, in allegiance to jihadist ideology.
And I think that is definitely a line of fire they're going to look into. It shows the danger of radicalization. Whether it doesn't matter the scale of the attack or the location. It's certainly not going to garnish the headlines like the so-called spectacular attacks do when it is a complex attack that has many victims. But it's a big worry for French security forces, who have been on high alert for nearly 3 years now, to control these smaller attacks, these smaller cells, if you will, of radicalization. They really need to clamp down and understand how radicalization happens, especially outside the big cities where, a sleepy country town can be attacked. So without a doubt, that will be the first line that the police will look at on how he was radicalized, and understanding a bit more about his life to stop others from, going down the same path.
Right. Mandy, I'll request you to stay with me, as also Mohamed Saleh. We've received word from the French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe. He's spoken on the situation as well. Let's listen in.
A situation is unfolding near Carcassonne in the south of France, in the town of Trebes. Gunshots have been heard. A man has apparently barricaded himself in a supermarket. He might have taken hostages. A police operation is underway. It's a serious situation, and it could explain that maybe, irrespective of what I want, I may have to leave this meeting.
All right, that was the French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe describing the situation unfolding in Trebes as serious. He didn't give too many more details, but said that it is being looked into with urgency. Let me go back to Mohamed Saleh, who continues to be with us. My colleague is with us from the newsroom. Saleh, if I could ask you again, this whole situation as far as France goes, we've seen, of course, the emergency threat level being lifted, state of emergency, being lifted in October last year. Was there reason enough in France to consider that there was some sort of handle that had been taken on, this burgeoning jihadist ideology within the country, and of course on terror incidents as well?
Absolutely, indeed. That is correct, Aisha. So last October, France lifted the state of emergency, which had in fact been put forth, after the attack a few months before that. Now, post that, there haven't been any major instances relating to terror. So yes, there was a heightened amount of surveillance and also police presence that continued, trying to provide with security at that point of time. But these are incidents which are very, very difficult to prevent. Now, this is an incident that has taken place in a very small town. It's not very clear as to what has led to the radicalization. Who is this individual? Was this individual someone who travelled to some of these known areas which have these which are known to be the breeding grounds of terrorism? We don't know that. At this point of time, it is still not very clear whether this one individual that we are talking about, who is said to have barricaded himself inside the supermarket, has he been taken into custody? Has he been, is he carrying out any sort of parleys with the police? Has he got any demands? We're not still very clear in terms of that. But at this point of time, Aisha, what needs to be looked at is for the French police and also the security officials to try and find out ways as to how to prevent attacks of this nature. Remember, according to some unconfirmed reports, there was also an instance which said this individual perhaps had resorted to a kind of a hit-and-run situation before he opened fire at a supermarket.
Right.
So that is also some information which is coming in. All of this unconfirmed at this point of time. But the French police, we are given to understand, have completely barricaded the area. There are about 300 to 400 police personnel who have been stationed around the supermarket. So we expect the siege of the supermarket, if one could so use the word, will end shortly. We are also given to understand that the gunman is alone inside the supermarket, which is what the Prime Minister there was also talking about. And we will have more information once the gunman has been apprehended in this case. Right.
Stay with me, Mohamed Saleh and Mandy Clark. Just for the benefit of our viewers joining in on the broadcast right now, let's take you through this statement. The first one really speaking that we've heard from an authority in France. This is the French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe speaking. Listen in.
A situation is unfolding near Carcassonne in the south of France, in the town of Trebes. Gunshots have been heard. A man has apparently barricaded himself in a supermarket. He might have taken hostages. A police operation is underway. It's a serious situation, and it could explain that maybe irrespective of what I want, I may have to leave this meeting.
Right, so the Prime Minister there referring to a town called Carcassonne, which is, I should tell our viewers, very close to Trebes, where this incident has taken place. Stephen Thierry, the journalist we were speaking with from France earlier, pointing out for us and clarifying that Trebes itself is a tiny town. It's a very small town in the south of France. It is not home to a large population at all. In fact, the supermarket where this incident is underway is in an isolated area. Also, there's a school that is 5 minutes away from there. In an update that is just coming in on the Associated Press, the Carcassonne airport has been shut. This is leading to long queues of passengers who are waiting there. So that's the other little bit of information that has just come in. The airport in Carcassonne, the town that was referred to by Edouard Philippe, has been closed. There are queues there for those who are waiting to get on flights as a result. So clearly, the French are not taking any chances at all. They are treating this with utmost priority and with urgency, given that this is, remember, the first such incident that has taken place, if, of course, the link to the Islamic State is established, the first major terror incident that has taken place since Emmanuel Macron took charge as the French president last year. Right, while I go across to my colleague Mandy Clark, who continues to be with us on the broadcast, we can actually pull up that map to give our viewers an idea of where exactly Trebes is as we continue to talk to Mandy. Mandy, just to come back to you, Europe in itself has been under siege by jihadist attacks, be it England, be it Germany or France itself. But there has been, thankfully so, let's say a decline in the number of incidents, large-scale incidents that have been happening in Europe. Do you think that this has something to do, of course, with the defeat of Islamic State in West Asia, in Iraq and Syria?
Well, it's difficult to know. You're right. Just yesterday was the one-year anniversary of the attack on Westminster Bridge, and then which led to a series of attacks in the UK specifically last year, where attackers claimed allegiance to Islamic State, and certainly the UK faced a series of attacks nearly every month. Now that has tapered off. Certainly France has its own share of jihadist attacks on its soil since 2015, but we have entered into a relative quiet period. There's a lot of speculation why that may be. Ultimately, some security experts point to the fact that Islamic State isn't really holding territory that it used to. It doesn't have that stronghold in Syria. It's getting really pushed out. And, of course, Iraq has taken back control of Mosul, which was another one of its strongholds. So it no longer has the territory and the power it used to. But, of course, that ideology remains pertinent. They do radicalize people online, so perhaps even though there's not the territory, it still does have residual power. And even though the amount of spate of attacks have slowed down, it's still a very real threat in Europe. And of course, just today, it shows that it's not an issue that has gone away. It's slowed down, but it's still an issue that Europe will be dealing with, and likely dealing with it for many years to come, because there is many fighters that left Europe to fight in West Asia, in Syria, in Iraq, are returning back to the United Kingdom, to Europe. And there has been warnings by authorities saying you can expect an increase in number of attacks because these people are used to war zones. They've been deeply radicalized and are on a mission to interrupt the life here in Europe. So although it has slowed down, there is a very real threat that remains here.
All right, the threat might have slowed down, but it continues to be one. Mandy Clark, thank you very much for joining us with that perspective from London. Also, Mohammed Saleh from the newsroom, thanks for giving us those details. Before we close out on the story for now, though, just to give our viewers an idea of where exactly Trebes is, where this incident is ongoing, here's a look at the map. This is, of course, a close-up of France and the area in the south of France where the situation is unfolding. This is a town called Trebes. A French journalist we were speaking with earlier pointed out that it's a small town in the south of France. It's not home to a large population at all. The supermarket itself in an isolated area of the town. Just a quick update also for our viewers as far as the French Prime Minister's statement goes. Edouard Philippe, they're saying that it seems to be a terrorist attack and the hostage situation is ongoing and the operation is not over. He said this on a visit to Mulhouse, saying also that the information we have as I speak leads us to think that this would be a terrorist attack.